These are two of the best televisions you can currently buy, even if they are 2024 models. In this case, I'm bringing to you the comparison with their 55-inch sizes. They are both LCD televisions, meaning they have a liquid crystal screen, and the backlighting technology is a conventional direct LED, and their color technology will be quantum dots. It is true that in some countries you can get versions of both models with full array direct LED backlight technology with local dimming, but I repeat, in this case, in my country, Colombia, at least they arrived without full array. That is to say, although they have a high amount of brightness, taking into account that they could be considered as two very basic low mid-range models, most likely the versions with full array will have a slightly higher amount of brightness. But I need you to understand that when I say they have a high amount of brightness, I'm referring to the range they belong. Because obviously there are televisions with higher amounts of brightness, but they are more expensive. The main thing you need to know in this area of this comparison in terms of scenes with color volume or color variety is that I already mentioned that both have quantum dot color technology. In this case, the pixel configuration of the LCD screen will be with vertical alignment, which means what is known as a UVA panel. The color representation of both models is not bad at all. It seems to me that it's enough for the vast majority of users. I also want to show you the color saturation capacity that both TVs have, in this case with HDR10 high dynamic range technology. Although the TCL has this parameter, dynamic color, which when is enabled provides greater color saturation compared to when it is disabled, it is true that the Hisense tend to show in high dynamic range, I repeat, greater color saturation. The saturation of the TCL is not bad at all. In fact, it is enough for the vast majority of users. I don't want you to increase this parameter as much as possible. I'm just showing you what both TVs are capable of in this area. But when it comes to content in a standard dynamic range, that is, without some type of high dynamic range technology, the tables turn, let's say, a little in favor of the TCL, showing greater color saturation and in some cases a little more brightness. With the last software update that the Hisense had, I feel that the results in terms of colors in high dynamic range improved a little. But in a standard dynamic range, I think the results remain the same. They are not the best results, but probably enough for a person who is not too demanding in terms of out-of-the-box color accuracy. In a standard dynamic range, as I'm going to show you, the color saturation capacity changes a little in favor of the TCL, activating of course the dynamic color parameter. As I say, I don't expect you to increase this parameter to maximum capacity. I just want you to show you what these two models can be capable of at their full capacity, because the quantum dot color technology, which is a color filter so to speak, is mainly responsible for showing slightly more saturated and more vivid colors. It is also good that you know that both models are compatible with Dolby Vision high dynamic range technology, which, like HDR10, HLG and HDR10 Plus, is only activated automatically on both televisions when it is detected that the content has any of this type of high dynamic range technologies. Personally, I have never given Dolby Vision importance. I consider that a television, whether or not it has Dolby Vision, is practically irrelevant from my point of view, although many people think otherwise. And I am saying this after reviewing and comparing so many TVs to date. I have already mentioned that the type of backlighting technology both models have is a conventional direct LED without local dimming, and that in some countries, versions with full array direct LED backlighting technology with local dimming are available. In these models, the results in dark scenes, despite not having a backlight technology that helps them improve performance, let's say it's okay, it's not perfect, it's not the best, but let's say it's much better compared to, of course, a television that has, for example, a different pixel configuration on its LCD screen, that is what is known as IPS or ADS panel. I remind you that both models have a UVA panel, and that helps them a lot in this type of scenes, even when there is some type of high dynamic range technology. The level of detail in both dark scenes and color scenes can vary a lot depending on each picture mode, and as such depending on the scene itself. Speaking of other aspects in terms of picture quality, it is good to mention that the uniformity of gray colors in both models is fine. There is a little dirty screen effect that is perceived with gray backgrounds, but when it comes to watching content with a lot of color volume, I consider that the dirty screen effect is at least tolerable, or in fact in some cases imperceptible. In terms of image upscaling, the two models perform well according to the range they belong. Just don't expect wonders, don't expect low-resolution content to be displayed in 4K. No current 4K TV, not even high-end TVs, will show you these results if the resolution of the content is very low. The viewing angles will not be good, which is normal because they have UVA panels. As you can see, the colors lose a lot of volume when the screens are viewed from very wide angles. The reflections handling from light sources on the screen is at least acceptable despite the fact that they have UVA panels. As for the motion handling, managing to further decrease the amount of judder effect in order to show a much smoother result in scenes of this type with camera panning or many fast movements, I personally like the work of the Hisense a little more. The result of the TCL is fine, but I perceive better results in terms of smoothness on the Q6N. For the gaming area, you must understand that you have to enable the picture mode known as a game mode in order to get the better performance and of course the lowest response times and the lowest input lag times. The advantage of the Hisense game bar is that it has preset picture modes, so you can change picture settings faster without negatively affecting overall gaming performance. In the case of the TCL game bar, I heard from a subscriber who told me that he had received an update that allowed it a better game bar, so to speak, which is the same one that the TCL C755 has, for example, which is a game bar that has at least 3 default picture modes. In my case, until now I have not received that update, and I don't know if that update will arrive at some point. We will have to wait, but as such, there is this game bar that the TCL has. Let's say it is not the best, but it has at least some functions, although the Hisense game bar also has those functions, such as making a crosshair appear on the screen. Both models have good results in terms of input lag, both in theory and in practice. I feel like almost anyone could be satisfied in this area with either of these two TVs. I want to tell you that the main difference in this gaming area is that the TCL from the size of 55 inches, as is this case, is compatible with the 120Hz, although up to 1440p. In 4K it is compatible up to 60Hz like the Hisense. In this case I do the comparison in 4K at 60Hz, and both models are compatible with variable refresh rate technologies. This means that in the vast majority of the scenes, when the video game goes up to 60 frames per second, for example, it is allowed for the refresh rates of both screens to remain at 60 Hz. Or if, for example, at some point the video game drops from 60 frames per second to, for example, 59 frames per second, the refresh rate of both screens will drop to 59 Hz and not 50 Hz as will happen on a television without variable refresh rate technologies. The performance of both models with these types of video games that can have a lot of dark scenes and fast movements is good despite having UVA panels. Perhaps some very trained gamer may perceive some ghosting effect. I personally have not yet perceived it in these models, at least not in an intensity that is annoying. Of course, this effect exists on both TVs, but from my point of view, it is really something very slight considering that they are low mid-range televisions, so to speak, enough for almost any user who has a not very high budget and wants to enjoy a good gaming experience, for example with a current video game console. For the smart area, you must keep in mind that these will be their remote controls. I have never personally liked the TCL remote because it is incredibly large, unnecessarily large I will say, with a key placement that is not very good from my point of view, while the Hisense remote control feels much more comfortable to grip with a better key placement. And both models have the microphone button for the Google Voice Assistant and they use two disposable AAA batteries. The operating system of both televisions is Android TV with a Google TV customization layer, Android 12 for the Hisense and Android 11 for the TCL. The smoothness when you want to open apps, when you want to jump from one app to another, open videos, fast forward, rewind is decent, being slightly better in most cases on the Hisense, but by very little difference. But I have personally noticed that in all televisions that have this operating system, the Wi-Fi signal reception is not the best compared, for example, to LG brand or Samsung brand televisions that have different operating system. I'm not sure if it has to do with the operating system as such, but so far that is the trend. And when the Wi-Fi signal reception is not the best, in both models the operating system in general slows down considerably and becomes very annoying. By the way, in the Hisense, I like that with this latest update, the location of these icons is possible to change as I'm showing you right now, which is really very useful, and I say this because when I made this review several months ago, this function was not possible. On the TCL, this function is still not possible in this menu for shortcuts. This will be the hardware according to the AIDA64 application which both models have. The main difference is that the Hisense's processor runs at a slightly higher frequency, which is perhaps why I feel the smoothness of the operating system on the Hisense is slightly better. They also differ in that the Hisense GPU is a little more updated. They also differ a little in terms of storage capacity, and in terms of the amount of RAM and memory they have practically the same. The apps store on both televisions is of course the Google Play Store, which is very extensive, and APK files can be installed on both televisions if required. By the way, in case you didn't know, you can change the name of both models so that when a device recognizes them, a name that is more familiar to you simply appears, because from the factory they usually have names such as Smart TV Pro or a name that is not really consistent with the name of the TV. Here, for example, I decided to change the names, for example, to Hisense Q6N and the TCL C655, and this so that they can obviously be recognized more easily. Then, when I want to use the option known as screen mirroring, for example, my Samsung brand smartphone quickly recognized TCL, and obviously with the name I just gave it. It is just assumed that on the Hisense it should also have been recognized. The three devices are connected to the same Wi-Fi network, and although I made several attempts, in none of them did the cell phone recognize the Hisense. I don't know why, which is why in the case of the Hisense I had to use the Google Home application. And you also need to know that neither of these models are compatible with multi-view or overlay screen or picture-in-picture. And this screen mirroring function can also be used with Apple devices. Both models are compatible with the function known as ambient mode in case you require it. And it is also good that you know that both televisions are compatible with the function known as hands-free voice control to enable the voice assistant simply by saying "Hey Google" or "OK Google." As for inputs, on the Hisense on the back you find one for headphones, one to connect something that has composite inputs, one on the back side you have for the LAN cable for internet, one for the optical digital cable, one for the air antenna cable, two USB 2.0 ports, and three HDMI ports, one of them compatible with enhanced audio return channel. In the TCL you find the difference that it only has one USB port, but it is 3.0, and the 3.5mm port is for connecting an adapter for composite inputs, but it does not have one for connecting headphones, for example. One of its HDMI ports is also compatible with enhanced audio return channel, and I remind you that it is compatible with 120Hz up to 1440p, not in 4K. Finally, I will talk to you about the speaker system that the two televisions have. In theory, they differ, let's say, by a lot. At least in theory, a difference of 15 watts, because the TCL also has a subwoofer that provides a greater amount of bass. And that is the main difference, and at the same time advantage for the TCL, which has more bass and of course feels a more powerful result. And for many people it is something important because they will not want to buy a soundbar. The performance on the Hisense speakers is fine for a small room, maybe a medium-sized one, not so large. Let's say that the sharpness is not bad, but as I said, if you want a little more power, the TCL will be your answer. But if you plan to buy a soundbar for any of these TVs, then there wouldn't be a problem in terms of speakers. At the end I will leave you with a comparison of both speaker systems so that you can more or less get an idea of how they may turn out in real life. And as conclusions to finish, I could tell you that currently for the majority of people, at least here in my country, Colombia, the Hisense is better for them because it is usually a little cheaper, and with everything I have shown you so far, I consider that it is not bad at all. So you can save a little more money. The operating system is a little better with better smoothness. The remote seems to me to have a more pleasant, more comfortable or more ergonomic design. In dark scenes, I feel that it showed a little less clouding effect, although it could also be because it has a little less brightness. As for colors, at least in high dynamic range, it is fine, although in a standard dynamic range, it is not the best. And let's say that the TCL is a little more worth it, simply if you want a slightly more powerful speaker system and compatibility with the 120Hz in 1440p for the gaming area. For everything else, I personally think that the Hisense Q6N is a little better for most users. But of course, I would like to know what do you think. Leave it in the comment section down below. Which model you will buy and why. I remind you, you can support my channel either through VAKI, through Patreon, also by making purchases through the referral links I leave you in the description. It will help me a lot because I get a small commission, and that of course help me to finance the televisions because everything comes out from my budget. Also by clicking the like button if you like this video, enabling the notification bell so you know instantly every time I upload a new video, and subscribing to my channel if you haven't already. I say goodbye for now. I leave you with the audio system comparison of both TVs. Until next time, thanks for watching.
The swarm brought ruin into our world. The swarm brought ruin into our world. Our proud people became refugees. Our proud people became refugees. And yet, they could not shatter our unity. And yet, they could not shatter our unity. For we are bound by the comma, the sacred union of our every thought and emotion. For we are bound by the comma, the sacred union of our every thought and emotion.